There's always that one moment. It's not when you block them. It's not when you walk away. It's not even when you stop replying. It's quieter than that. It's when your energy changes. When the emotional cord they've been feeding off of finally snaps. That's the moment avoidance realize they lost you. For good. See, avoidance don't believe in endings. They believe in pauses. They think every silence is temporary, that no matter how many times they push you away, you'll circle back because you understand them. They mistake your empathy for eternity, your patience for permanence, your forgiveness for dependency. But when you finally reach that point of emotional neutrality, when you stop explaining, stop reacting, stop feeling for them, that's when it hits them. You're not angry anymore. You're indifferent, and indifference is the death of their control. Because here's the truth most people don't understand about avoidance. They crave emotional distance, but only if you're still emotionally attached. They need to know they could have you if they wanted to, that they can reappear any time and the door will still be open. It keeps their ego alive. It feeds their illusion of power. But when they come back and realize that door isn't open anymore, that your energy doesn't bend toward them, that your tone doesn't shake, their entire nervous system goes into shock. That's the moment they know it's over. Psychologists call it attachment collapse. It's when their emotional defense system finally recognizes that the bond is broken beyond repair. Their brain floods with confusion. Their body goes into withdrawal. Their ego starts bargaining. It's not love they feel at first. It's loss of control. The sudden awareness that you're not a fallback anymore. You were the safe place they mocked, the love they minimized, the constant they assumed would never disappear. Now that you're gone, they feel the absence like oxygen leaving the room. They'll scroll through your old messages, trying to reattach to the energy that once felt so familiar. They'll replay old memories, not because they want to relive the relationship, but because they want to remember who they were when you cared. Because the truth is, you didn't just love them, you stabilized them. You made them feel significant in a way they couldn't on their own. And now that stability is gone. Their control is gone. Their validation supply cut off. They don't miss the relationship. They miss the reflection, the version of themselves that looked confident in your presence. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." But avoidance don't delight in change. They resist it. They deny it. Until one day, reality doesn't ask for permission. It just arrives. And it usually arrives in silence. It's not triggered by your glow-up post, your new relationship, or your success. It's triggered by your peace. That's what they can't handle. Seeing you calm, seeing you unbothered, seeing you become the version of yourself that doesn't need closure, because closure already lives in your peace. Here's how it happens. They reach out one last time expecting the old energy, the warmth, the softness, the willingness. But instead, they're met with neutrality. Not coldness, not anger, just calm, balanced detachment. You respond without urgency. You speak without tension. You exist without effort. And that's when they know. You're not pretending this time. You're done. Their mind replays every moment they took for granted, every warning you gave, every effort they ignored, and they finally realize you didn't walk away overnight. They lost you gradually, moment by moment, until you had nothing left to give. That realization doesn't spark action. It sparks collapse. They'll act like they don't care, but that calm you carry eats at them, because it reminds them of something they'll never find again. Someone who understood their chaos, but chose peace anyway. And you've become the person they always needed, just not for them anymore. Seneca once wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." That's where you are now. You're no longer a chapter in their story. They're a lesson in yours. They finally realize what they lost, but it's too late to reclaim it. Because your silence wasn't punishment, it was transformation. It wasn't about proving a point, it was about protecting your peace. You didn't just leave them behind, you left behind the version of yourself that needed to prove your worth. So, when they finally realize they lost you for good, it won't be during the chaos, it'll be during your calm. Not when you shout, but when you smile. Not when you explain, but when you stop. That's the real ending. Not when they walked away, but when you stopped following. Stay locked in, because in this episode, we're breaking down the exact psychological moment the avoidant recognizes final loss, how it hits, why it lasts, and how your peace becomes their closure. And if you've been following Volume 8, their breaking point, silence, replacement, and regret. Thank you. To every subscriber, supporter, and Ace Wisdom channel member, your strength fuels this entire movement. If this resonates, drop a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment below. My peace is the closure. Because when you master detachment, you stop seeking validation. You start embodying power. This is Ace Wisdom. Let's go deeper. Stay focused. Key point 1. The emotional detachment. They never saw coming. Avoidants don't lose you when you walk away. They lose you when you stop trying. That's the first crack, the moment their emotional system starts to short-circuit, not from your absence, but from your shift. You stop explaining. You stop seeking clarity. You stop fighting for understanding. And suddenly, they can't read you anymore. That's the exact moment the control they built their ego around starts to slip through their fingers. See, avoidants live off emotional predictability. They thrive on knowing how you'll react, when you'll text, what you'll say, how you'll bend just to keep the peace. That's their safety net, not connection, control. So when you start pulling your energy back, when your tone gets calm instead of emotional, when your words get shorter, when your interest fades quietly instead of dramatically, they panic. Not outwardly, not visibly, but internally the anxiety starts to build, because suddenly they don't know how to manage you anymore. You're not reacting the way you used to. You're not rewarding their distance with pursuit. You're not feeding the game. That's when their detachment stops working. Psychologists call this the attachment disruption point, the exact moment when the dynamic that kept an avoidant emotionally safe no longer operates in their favor. They built their comfort on the idea that you'd always care harder, that you'd always fight to reconnect, that no matter how far they pulled back, you'd close the gap. But when that pattern breaks, when you stop chasing and start choosing peace, it's like emotional gravity disappears. They're floating in uncertainty, completely lost without the structure your care used to provide. That's the irony of the avoidant mindset. They crave distance, but they need attachment to survive it. They feel powerful when you chase, but empty when you don't. They feel safe when they withdraw, but unsafe when you let them. So when you finally stop trying, you're not ignoring them. You're removing the emotional scaffolding they use to lean on. And for the first time, they feel the full weight of their own isolation. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." For the avoidant, this moment exposes just how chaotic those thoughts really are. They've spent years believing that emotional control equals emotional strength. But now, the control feels like emptiness. The silence they once craved feels like punishment. They thought detachment protected them. But your silence revealed it was just fear wearing a mask. You'll notice the subtle signs of this shift if it's happening now. They suddenly check in after weeks of distance. They ask indirect questions, pretending to be casual. They start interacting with your posts again, carefully, quietly. They try to test the waters with neutral phrases like, "How have you been?" or "You disappeared on me." That's not connection. That's confusion. They're trying to decode whether your silence is anger or detachment. And when they realize it's neither, that's when the fear sets in. Because anger means you still care. Detachment means you're done caring. And when an avoidant feels that difference, they start losing their internal balance. It's not guilt yet. It's awareness, that cold realization that something has changed and they can't fix it with charm, manipulation, or withdrawal anymore. Their mind starts racing. Did they move on? Did I push too far? Why aren't they reacting? Every question pulls them deeper into the same spiral they once avoided, because now they're the one feeling uncertain. They're the one replaying memories. They're the one analyzing tone, body language, and silence. They don't understand how the person they once had so much control over can now move through life without them. That's what makes this moment powerful, because you're not trying to make them regret losing you. You're simply living like someone who finally learned their worth. And that, more than anything, is what destabilizes an avoidant. Seneca once wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." That's what they feel now, lost in the emotional distance they created. They used to feel powerful in silence. Now they feel invisible in it, because they're finally realizing that the emotional detachment they used to weaponize against others has turned against them. You're not mad, you're not mourning, you're not reaching, you're free. And that freedom, that calmness they once dismissed as cold, is the exact moment they realize the truth. They don't just miss your presence. They miss the feeling of mattering. You're not punishing them. You're simply showing them what life looks like when peace becomes your only priority. And for an avoidant, that's the first sign they've lost you for good. Stay locked in, because in key point 2, we'll break down the psychological shift that happens next, how their false sense of control turns into panic, and the exact signs that tell you they're starting to feel the loss on a deeper emotional level. Key point 2, the psychological shift, from control to panic. This is where the avoidance calm turns into chaos, where that cold, confident exterior they once wore starts to melt into confusion, restlessness, and emotional panic. Because what began as a game of control, "Let's see who breaks first. Let's see if they'll chase me again," has turned into something they can't manage anymore. The silence isn't power now. It's exposure. It's accountability. It's their reflection staring back at them and they can't hide from it anymore. See, avoidants are wired to believe they hold emotional control. They withdraw, you chase. They go silent, you reach out. They keep the upper hand by managing the distance. But when you stop chasing, you take away their favorite source of power, your reaction. And without that reaction, their nervous system loses its rhythm. It's not peace they feel. It's panic disguised as stillness. Psychologists call this the disorganized panic loop. It's the moment their defense mechanisms start collapsing under their own weight. Avoidance spends so long running from connection that when true detachment finally arrives, their body interprets it as danger. Their mind says, "I wanted space." Their body says, "Why does this feel like loss?" The contradiction between those two signals creates internal chaos, heart racing, sleepless nights, obsessive thoughts, mood swings. They don't call it heartbreak, but that's exactly what it is. At this stage, you'll start seeing signs of reactivation. They'll reappear online more. They'll post things that sound like subtext, lyrics, quotes, nostalgia. They'll test your attention without confronting their emotions directly, because panic never shows up as vulnerability. It shows up as indirect behavior. They'll try to spark curiosity. They'll use subtle bait like, "Remember that one place we used to go?" Or, "You'd probably laugh at what just happened." But what they're really saying is, "Are you still there?" Because the panic isn't just about missing you, it's about losing emotional control. It's about realizing that for the first time, they don't know how to pull you back in. And that's terrifying to someone who built their self-worth around being the one who decides when closeness begins and ends. You've disrupted the cycle, and their ego can't handle it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But for the avoidant, this is the stage where they realize they've never actually had power over their mind at all. They've only had avoidance of emotion, avoidance of accountability, avoidance of intimacy. And now, the silence they use to control others with is the same silence that controls them. Their mind starts looping through every justification they use to feel safe. They were too emotional. They were too needy. They wanted too much. But none of it lands anymore, because deep down they know you weren't needy. You were present. You weren't too much. You were just consistent. And they mistook consistency for weakness. That realization is the beginning of the panic spiral. They'll start comparing you to everyone else. Every conversation feels shallow. Every new connection feels fake. Every replacement reminds them of what they destroyed through pride and fear. That's the moment when silence stops feeling safe and starts feeling like punishment. Because your absence isn't just absence anymore, it's a mirror, and mirrors never lie. Seneca once said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." This is their friction. This is their trial. The emotional reckoning they spent years avoiding. Because this time, it's not your words teaching them. It's your silence. And silence doesn't comfort them anymore. It corrects them. They finally feel what they once made you feel. The weight of being misunderstood. The sting of emotional distance. The ache of waiting for something that's never coming. Their panic will disguise itself as control. But don't be fooled. Behind every "I'm fine" post, every forced smile, every new fling, is an ego gasping for air. They're not calm. They're collapsing quietly. And the louder they perform, the emptier they feel inside. Because when your peace becomes louder than their noise, it triggers the one thing they've spent their entire life avoiding: emotional truth. This is the stage where the avoidant starts realizing that maybe they didn't just lose you. Maybe they lost themselves along the way. And that truth hurts more than heartbreak. Because you can replace people, but you can't replace peace. And now that you've reclaimed yours, they know they'll never find it again in chaos. Stay locked in, because key point 3 is where the final shift happens. When panic turns into regret, and they're forced to face the emotional reality they've been denying all along, that the person they ran from was the only one who ever made them feel safe. Key point 3, the regret awakening when they finally feel it. This is the moment the avoidant runs out of defenses. The noise in their head quiets down, the distractions stop working, and for the first time, they actually feel the loss, not intellectually, not as a passing thought, but deep in the gut, the kind of realization that hits when it's too late to fix it. That's the regret awakening, and it's brutal. Up until now, their silence was strategy, their distance was protection, their detachment was armor. But now, all that armor feels heavy. It's not keeping them safe. It's keeping them stuck. Because once the adrenaline fades and the ego stops performing, there's only one thing left to face: the emptiness. The silence they used to control you with is now the silence controlling them. This is where the mind and heart finally sync up. All the logic that once justified their behavior starts collapsing under the weight of emotion. They remember the sound of your voice, the way you made chaos feel calm, the small details they never acknowledged before, your tone, your patience, your presence. And it's in those tiny, ordinary memories that regret starts to grow roots. Psychologists call this the delayed emotional processing phase. It's when an avoidant, suppressed feelings finally surface, not when you leave, but when they realize you're not coming back. Because at first they think you're just quiet. Then they think you're angry. Then they think you're bluffing. But when time passes and your silence still sounds peaceful, not loud, not dramatic, just still, that's when it hits. You're not waiting anymore. You've moved from attachment to acceptance, from reaction to resolution, and that's the point of no return. They start replaying conversations differently now. All the times you said, "I just need communication. I just want to feel understood. I'm not trying to argue. I'm trying to connect." Those words they brushed off as too emotional now echo like truth. They start realizing that everything you asked for wasn't control. It was connection, and everything they called space was really just fear. That's the moment the regret becomes physical, the pit in their stomach, the restless nights, the random memories that hit out of nowhere, because the body remembers what the ego forgets, and their body remembers you, your tone, your scent, your consistency. They thought they were running toward peace, but now they're drowning in their own stillness, because the only thing louder than your silence is their guilt. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." For the avoidant, this is where that wisdom hits, because they finally see the difference between being independent and being emotionally unavailable. They spent so long protecting their freedom that they destroyed their peace. They confused safety with solitude, and now solitude feels like punishment. You'll often see this stage unfold quietly. They won't post as much. They'll withdraw from people. They'll stop pretending everything's fine, because internally they're in emotional overload. The brain that once rationalized everything can't outthink the ache anymore. They might even reach out, but the tone will be different this time. Softer, uncertain, human. It won't sound like a game. It'll sound like someone who finally understands what they took for granted. They'll say things like, "I didn't realize how much you did for me. I pushed away the one person who actually cared." Or maybe they won't say anything at all, because pride still lingers even when awareness arrives. But you'll feel it in their energy, that hesitation, that humility, that emotional crack in their armor that wasn't there before. That's the regret awakening. And the hardest part for them isn't that they lost you, it's that they lost access to who they were when they had you. You made them softer, kinder, more grounded, and now they have to face the reality that they'll never find that reflection again. They'll search for you in new people, but all they'll find are comparisons, imitations, moments that almost feel like you, but never do, because peace like yours can't be replaced. It can only be respected. And they learned that lesson too late. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That's what defines this stage. They'll suffer in silence, imagining conversations, rewinding moments, rehearsing apologies they'll never say. Because it's not just losing you, it's realizing you're no longer reachable. Not physically, not emotionally, not spiritually. You've evolved beyond their old pattern, and they can feel it. This is the moment avoidants realize. They didn't just lose the relationship. They lost the version of you who still believed in them. And that version isn't coming back. You didn't move on to hurt them. You moved on to heal yourself. And that healing, that peace, that glow they now envy, it's the clearest sign that their loss is permanent. Stay locked in, because Key Point 4 reveals what happens next. The aftershock. When regret turns into obsession, and the same silence that freed you starts haunting them, when they finally understand it's over. So here we are. The ending they never expected. The moment you stop being a person they can win back and start becoming a lesson they'll never forget. Because avoidants don't realize they've lost you when you leave. They realize it when you stop feeling, when your voice doesn't shake, when your energy doesn't bend, when your silence no longer feels like punishment. It feels like peace. That's when it finally sinks in. It's not distance anymore, it's done. They used to believe time was on their side, that you'd wait, that you'd always care a little too much for a little too long. But now your peace speaks louder than any message ever could. And for them, that silence hits harder than any goodbye, because closure isn't something you gave them, it's something they're forced to find alone. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." And that's what this moment truly is. Change, not revenge, not punishment, just evolution. They're finally learning what you already mastered, that love without effort is chaos, and connection without respect is emptiness. You didn't lose them. You lost the need to keep proving your worth. And that's the highest form of peace there is. Now they scroll through your old photos and can't recognize the person you used to be, because you've evolved past every version of yourself they knew. The chaser, the fixer, the forgiver, all gone. You've become the calm they can't recreate. And that calm, that's your closure. They'll replay it all. The texts they ignored, the love they deflected, the moments they took for granted. But you won't hear about it. Because regret is silent. It doesn't reach out. It lingers. And it's not your job to witness their lesson. It's your job to continue living yours. To everyone who's been following Volume 8, their breaking point, silence, replacement and regret, thank you. To every subscriber, viewer and Ace Wisdom channel member, your strength, discipline and emotional awareness are what make this movement powerful. You've proven that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. That peace isn't the end of love, it's the beginning of self-respect. If this episode spoke to you, drop a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for the final chapters of Volume 8. Because what's coming next is the shift beyond the avoidance cycle, how to use everything you've learned to build real, secure, lasting love. No more chasing, no more proving, just alignment. And before you go, remember this mantra. My peace was the lesson. Type it below. Own it. Because that's the truth that set you free. You didn't walk away to make them miss you. You walked away to meet yourself. And that's where the real power lives. This is Ace Wisdom. Stay grounded, stay unbothered, and as always, peace and power.